Hello Orchid friends, welcome back to my channel. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a great day, staying healthy and staying safe. Today here we have my Phalaenopsis equestris. This is a coerulea type. I've had this orchid for just under 2 years. I have 2 equestris orchids in my collection. They're both coerulea type. And today, this video, we're going to talk about the first one because they're both in different setup in different media. And today, I want to focus on this one, this orchid, the first one. And this one is grown in a moss medium in a cup with no drainage holes. So yes, this one is in the method, what we so call the moss no drainage hole method, moss no hole method. The reason I used this method for this orchid was when I first got this orchid, the root was just okay. It wasn't great, provided that, it's still a small young plant. In fact, this is probably its second flowering. When I first got it, it had a very small spike with a few flowers. This is the second time blooming. Still a young plant, still young, and so maybe that's why it doesn't have a very big root system. And I was hoping that this moss no drainage hole method would allow this orchid to further establish its roots. And it did. It actually helped this orchid grow some roots. You can't really quite tell from the video clip here, but it did grow a couple new roots since I repotted this orchid. This orchid doesn't really have that big of a fragrance per se, but its multi-floral capability, which is obviously a equestris characteristic, and also just the lip. The lip itself, it's that coerulea light blue purple-ish color, is its known trait. I know that there are many different kinds of equestris cultivars. I have seen lips that's completely white, light yellow, orange, red, or entire flower is red. There are many different kinds, and I know that some people love equestris, and I also think this is a very fascinating orchid, but I just kept waiting because I was thinking to myself that equestris is a relatively common available orchid, and with so many different variety at the time, I didn't know what type I want. And so I came across this orchid while I was looking for purple orchids or blue orchids. So this sort of grabbed my attention. And it wasn't expensive. It was, I think, $15 or it was under $20 for sure. And here are just some photos of the orchid maturing its buds. In the frame, you see 2 spikes. Those are the spikes of both my equestris. The other one is also coerulea. That was a gift from someone. But this one is the one I purchased. Equestris is also known for producing keikis. When it's an older plant, when it's well established, don't cut the spikes off because it may potentially give you more keikis or just, elongate further to give you more blooms. I have seen a photo online. I can't remember when. It's been at least a couple years. It's an old plant, equestris, and it has 4 or 5 spikes, with each spike having at least 1 keiki, and some of the spikes even had 2 keikis. It was quite something to see for sure. And that's when I learned equestris has this capability. But I think it would take a while for my plants to be able to do that because the 2 that I have are still relatively young. So, but I'm happy, not complaining. Equestris just, they look cute. So I think I will keep both of them, especially the other one is gift. They're the same type of orchid, coerulea type, and then they bloomed out to look almost exactly the same, if not the same. So I'll keep both of them. In terms of watering though, this orchid, because it's in a container with no drainage hole, so the most common method I use is just give it a set amount of water, and that amount is 1/4 cup of water. Another way that you could potentially water this orchid is you just let it soak. You just add, say, 1 cup of water in there, let it soak, and then you just have to tilt the cup enough to drain the water. But you do have to kind of have a little bit more patience, because you are supposed to let the water drip out completely until it doesn't drip, and then put it back. But you need to go back to it in an hour's time. Just after a certain amount of time, go back to it, because of gravity. You are still going to see a little bit of excess water at the bottom. Now, if your environment is drier, or if you have really good ventilation, that may not be an issue. Otherwise, it could be too wet for too long, depending on obviously the root system of your orchid, and also the amount of moss and the cup size that you use. But for just this particular orchid, the amount of moss and the 12-ounce cup, if I have too much excess water at the bottom, even if it's just 1/4 of an inch, it would be a little too wet, because I like for all my orchids to have that 1 week wet dry cycle. So make sure you have really good ventilation if you want to use the soaking method to hydrate your orchid. Make sure you dump out the water, let it drip until there's no more dripping, and then put it back. Wait for 1 hour, go back to it, tilt the cup again. I guarantee you would have some excess water flowing out the cup. In terms of fertilizer, this orchid gets quarter strength fertilizer, so that's only 25%. That's the concentration I give to most of all my orchids for convenience sake. I don't want to have to mess around with different calculation and different kinds of strength, because, you know, I only want to spend about an hour and a half watering my just over 100 orchids weekly. I don't want to have to spend more time than that. At least that's where I am at with my orchid journey. I do have more time, but I'd rather use my other time for other stuff, or even just use other free time to stare at my orchid versus working for them. It's really that balance that everybody has to find. You know, some people may be okay with spending 2 hours watering their orchids, sometimes, you know, maybe 3 hours. But for me, at this point in time, 1 hour and a half, 90 minutes is as much as I'm willing to spend on a weekly basis. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!